Hi, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening from wherever you're dialing into this or downloading our webinar. Thank you for attending today's EfficientIP sponsored webinar with IDC. Learn to protect your remote workers and cloud applications and data. I'm Kirk Appelman. I am the General Manager and Vice President for North America for EfficientIP. And today I'm joined by a couple of colleagues here. One esteemed analyst from IDC, Romain Fouchereau, and also one of our extremely knowledgeable and excellent product managers, Alex Chauvin. And Alex, part of his product line is our security products, including Guardian and others. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Romain. Romain is going to spend a few minutes talking about the IDC report that we published just a couple of weeks ago. Then we'll go into more of a panel discussion, and obviously and always your questions are appreciated, and we will address those at the end of the panel discussion. So Romain, to you.
Yeah, thank you, Kirk. Hello, everyone. So my name is Romain Fouchereau. As Kirk said, I'm a research manager at IDC's European Security Research Team. And earlier on this year, IDC and EfficientIP surveyed organizations all over the world around DNS security to better understand the evolution of the trends and the threats around it. And because we've been conducting this research for several years now, we can see that awareness of DNS security continues to grow, but also that cost, the frequency, and the number of attacks remain really high. And of course, COVID-19 happened and the massive shift towards working from home, and that resulted in huge disruptions for organizations with attacks on infrastructure at an all-time high, especially phishing and ransomware. So I'm going to talk you some of the findings from the survey, and you can download a copy of the report in the handout tab directly in the webinar, or directly if you go to efficientip.com. So according to the 21 DNS security survey, we saw that 87% of organizations experienced one or more DNS-based attacks during the year. This is 8% more than last year. So together with that high number of attacks, we saw that the cost is extremely high as well. On average, $950,000 per attack. So this is very high financial consequences.
So just to clarify that, that's actually $950,000, not $950.
Yeah. Oh, $5,000. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, quite. And on average, an organization gets attacked nearly 8 times a year, which is also a very high number. And if you look a bit more into the detail, we see that nearly 20% of organizations get attacked on a monthly basis, and there's even quite a high number that get attacked on a weekly basis. And there is a direct business impact as a result. We see that 76% suffered application downtime, being their cloud services or their in-house applications, and that could be private data center or private clouds. And as we know, no application available means no business. We also saw a quarter of organizations being victim of data theft, and this is one of the biggest growth we've seen with this type of attack. It was only 16% last year. And that's because cyber criminals are really looking for sensitive customer information or intellectual property that has value. We also saw that 23% suffered attacks that were taking advantage of a cloud misconfiguration, and that was plus 13% compared to what we registered last year. And this is a big concern because digital transformation is happening, and also because the pandemic has accelerated this move to cloud strategies. And these impacts show how much value can be found in DNS security. Over half of organizations see DNS as a critical component to protect the remote workforce. And this is very important because enterprise boundaries are blurring, and organizations have added a really strong focus on securing their remote workers, as well as their on-premise and cloud infrastructures. We also see that awareness of DNS security remains really high. We had 76% of respondents deeming it critical. That was only 64% 2 years ago. And this survey really confirms this awareness, because almost all companies, and here we are at 99%, say that they have some sort of security for DNS in place. But many have it as part of a broader security solution, so maybe part of their next generation firewall or UTM, and therefore they do not benefit from some of the advantage that purpose-built DNS security would bring, such as business continuity, data protection, and user protection. So this year's report really shows that nearly every company has had their apps or services disrupted by DNS attacks at one point during the year. And given that level and frequency of damage suffered, it's really important for organizations to make sure that DNS security is a critical part of their overall security strategy. And that's because DNS can be used to detect threats, to also simplify and accelerate mitigation, to help protect from data theft, but also it plays a key role in providing actionable intelligence to the whole security ecosystem. So that's it from me as a quick overview of the report. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Romain. So now we'll break into a roundtable discussion with Romain and Alex and me. So first question I have, Romain, you mentioned, and obviously you mentioned the impact of the pandemic and many organizations scrambling to support remote workers and work from home all over the world. Obviously, that's a trend that's going to continue well into the future, and it seems like that's a new dynamic for many organizations. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations in the context of DNS of how organizations can ensure the security and protection of both the organizations themselves, but also their now remote users?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, of course, we've seen in our research that secure remote access has been one of the top use cases for the second year in a row now. We have learned that remote workers fall more for phishing scam. Now there's big reliance on home Wi-Fi and home security. People are using their personal devices for work, but also their corporate PCs for personal use when the day is done. And in most cases, it's done through VPNs. But we know this is an old technology. It's not user-friendly. It's using a lot of bandwidth. It's creating latency, and that overall gives poor user experience. Especially if you are working from home, you launch your VPN. Your partner might be also working from home, doing the same. The kids might be watching TV, someone playing online. So it's just not possible. But really, outside of the corporate network, users and devices have to be protected and have to protect the traffic through encryption with access control. And really, we can't recommend enough to encrypt traffic when using home networks. And this can be also done not only with a VPN, but with DNS encryption using DOH. And if you use this application access filtering with DNS security and DOH, it will also help with regulatory compliance. And in our survey, when we asked what tools could be used other than VPN and firewalls, and that were considered useful for protecting apps and services, but also to make them available for remote workforce, and we saw that DOH came up at 42%. So organizations do see the value of DOH there, to ensure safe and secure online activities.
Yeah, that's great. And also, I'd recommend the NSA published a paper a couple of months ago about DOH and DNS security that I highly recommend everybody download and take a look at. Alex, do you have any kind of comments in addition to what Romain just discussed?
No, that's effectively the case. DOH and let's say DNS encryption can be over TLS, over HTTPS. Seems to be a very good starting point to protect the home users, even if they are using a device from the company, in order to bring back the traffic, the DNS traffic, to controlled DNS servers, in order to maybe apply some filtering, and to check whether some malicious sites are contacted. We've seen a lot of attacks last year and starting of this year on these kind of targets. That's very easy for attackers to go for home workers, and effectively, like you said, Kirk, it's going to be a trend. So we have to protect as much as we can our workers.
And through protecting our workers, protect our organizations as
Sure.
well. You know, the vulnerable worker, and then using that as an entry point into the enterprise is something we all need to be aware of. So just shifting gears a little bit on that front. Those of us have been in cybersecurity for a long time. The defenders, we've spent as an industry billions of dollars on defenses, technology, tools, tactics, all those kinds of things. Yet the IDC report shows that DNS-based attacks continue to be prolific, particularly in ransomware. We've seen obviously very high-profile ransomware attacks recently. At the same time as you go through this kind of arms race or cat and mouse game, are we seeing some new tools and techniques that the attackers are using to stay ahead of defenses?
We do see a lot of activity effectively on the attacker side. They are very innovative and try always to find a very easy way to enter the computer, to install malware, and to perform a ransomware. It's very good those days to do a ransomware. It can bring you some money back. So interesting as an attack. And since we are talking about the DNS, effectively most of the malware, most of the ransomware are using the DNS. So it's not always DNS as a service that is targeted through a denial of service or phishing. It's also to install the malware on the laptop or the PC, and to get access to the command and control in order to know the next action to perform, like ciphering the files or getting the keys. And we do see a lot of activity on how the malware is contacting the command and control through a lot of domain names that are generally generated through algorithms, so it's not possible to detect those by just running classical filters. So we need some other way to get access to that.
Sure. I mean, that's a really interesting point. I mean, domain generation algorithms, or DGAs, they've been around for a decade. However, they continue to get more sophisticated and more difficult to detect and identify through traditional kind of data feeds and things like that. Alex, is there some things or technologies that are available, or approaches that are effective against kind of unknown domains that are generated primarily through DGAs?
So yeah, effectively, we are working on such solution to not to fill dictionaries on domains, because we know it's even impossible when a DGA is performing is creating millions of domains per day. But looking at what the application is trying to resolve, and trying to bring some cohorts of users versus the domains, and how the domains are even existing or not, we can detect very version of let's say those new malware and ransomware, and try to block this kind of traffic before the domain is well known, and therefore is installed in a list that can be blocked afterwards.
Right. So some of these data feeds are very, very good and very powerful, and the research is fantastic. But if it's creating 1 million domains a day, to stay ahead of that, you need some kind
we need both.
Yeah, you need to have both. So kind of I always put as belt and suspenders kind of approach that.
Exactly.
Good. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about zero trust models. We've been talking about, again, for a decade or more, the perimeter dissolving. It's absolutely dissolved. It doesn't exist anymore between, we talked about remote users, but cloud and hybrid cloud and private cloud and all the different kind of cloudiness there is out there. Plus, hosted applications, SaaS applications, integrating with third parties and vendors. So, the zero trust or perimeterless environment has become really critical. How do you see, or what recommendations do you have, either Romain or Alex, around implementation of zero trust architectures through DNS?
Yeah, maybe I can start. Yeah, so the zero trust approach or zero trust strategy, which is really a never trust and always verify approach, relies on getting valuable and accurate data, but also on the deployment of intelligent security enforcement engines. And for this, it's important to monitor and analyze user behavior, but also to control access to apps and services. And this is really vital for a successful zero trust implementation. And because DNS is a critical tool of that zero trust framework, because it has the potential to not only analyze client behavior, but also to make a decision to control application access using UBA, user behavior analysis. So, and do that together with filtering. So I think there's really three important points where DNS can have a really important role in zero trust. And first, it's around to gain great visibility over events on the network, and that's can be done because DNS sees all traffic intent, so being internet traffic, but also internal traffic, and that allows to gain visibility down to the individual client. The second is around having analytics in real time, and DNS can perform user behavior analysis and offer DNS filtering to control application access early in the communication. So this is really important there. And the third one is around automation and orchestration. And that's, we talked a little bit about that DNS can help security policies and to automate security responses. And then it can feed all those security events into a SIEM or a SOC or other components in that security ecosystem.
And just to add a word on that, this is somewhere we are working a lot with our DNS and especially the security part with Guardian is effectively on gathering a lot of data on each user and what is trying to resolve and to access in terms of application to be able to perform some policy enforcement on whether a user has access to an application or not, whether an IoT has access to an application or not. It's a good way and a smart way to start stopping some traffic, even if the DNS is not seeing the traffic itself. It sees all the intents, and it's a very smart way to start blocking some application access.
Got it. So just one last question in the panel here. Obviously the IDC report clearly, details that, DNS-based attacks continue to be a problem. We're seeing, an increased amount of whether that's used for data exfiltration or for command and control, for service disruption and kind of a DDoS style attack, or targeting DNS infrastructure to take down an organization for service disruption. Are there any other things you haven't talked about so far this morning, as far as architecture, technologies, methodologies to help defend against these types of attacks?
Yeah, maybe I could give maybe a few recommendations on how that leveraging DNS could help to improve network security. So we've seen that for effective security across your full infrastructure, it's important to take a holistic approach. So try to bridge all the different silos that still exist today, and that can be achieved in particular by sharing this actionable data and security events that we have talked about. So this is where DNS has a really important role to play in the full security ecosystem, because it understands network traffic intent, and it is capable of filtering client access and also the enhanced control that it gives over user privacy. So I think there's three interesting points that can be used. So we've talked about it a little bit at the beginning. It's to enhance privacy of your remote workers with the private DOH solution. So using a private infrastructure for DNS resolution and security will improve the control and protect users' privacy better by keeping the data that is related to traffic within the organization. The second is to eliminate cloud service downtime that can be caused through or by cloud misconfigurations. And that can be done through the automation of lifecycle management of IP resources, both for provisioning and also for deprovisioning. And it will eliminate errors in configuration, as well as it will help to optimize the utilization of those resources. And the third one is to prevent the spread of attacks by making DNS your first line of defense. So this can be done by using DNS traffic visibility for behavioral threat detection, together with domain threat intelligence and DNS query filtering. So all of this will enable breaches to be detected early in the network and will make application access control stronger.
All right, great, thank you. Alex, anything else to add to that?
I will just emphasize effectively on the cloud downtime. We've seen a lot of news on that. Microsoft last year, I guess, or maybe 2 years ago, and recently Electronic Arts has some issue with a misconfiguration of DNS entries. So it happens to very big companies. We have to take care of that, because that's a very easy way for attackers to take control of part of the domains and rebuild some certificates and ease phishing. That's a good way to install malware and ransomware on customer laptop or even employees' laptop.
Yeah, and actually in our survey, we saw that almost half of organizations suffered cloud downtime as a result of a DNS attack, and a quarter was due to abusing a cloud misconfiguration. And and actually the Cloud Security Alliance confirmed that misconfiguration is one of the, or even the top cause of data breaches, and that has also been accelerated by that quick transition to fully distributed teams.
And things that have probably no impact when the devices were in our data center. Now that those may be in the cloud, in a public cloud, that we need to take care of that.
Absolutely. Actually, that was just shifting over to the questions from the listeners or the audience. One of the questions we got was, what impact can result from a cloud misconfiguration?
Yeah. I mean, we kind of talked about it, but yeah, because cloud is only getting bigger and bigger, and this is very time-consuming and more complex, and that leads to more error. And in the long run, it can lead to DNS misconfiguration that then will impact the services, especially if the enterprise is running a multi-cloud environment. And misconfigurations and oversights in cloud environments can cause really big damage. I mean, forgotten DNS records in the cloud that can leave the door open for DNS attacks. And we know that these DNS attacks tend to target organizations that do have large and complex infrastructures.
Sure. Okay. Good. And then we kind of touched on this one again earlier, but another question around, how can DNS be leveraged by the defender to defend against ransomware attacks that obviously are very high profile these days?
Yeah, one of the things to try effectively to detect access from early installed malware. Generally, they have not yet. They don't know what to do on the PC or the network, and they are waiting for orders coming back from a command and control. So this communication can happen through DNS because it's very easy. We already talked about DGA and the complexity to detect that. So in addition, with any security measure, put some at the very beginning of the transaction with the DNS, detecting how the malware is progressing in terms of installation on all the laptops or the PCs in the infrastructure. We have in our research, we do see some malware installing at ISPs because we are getting information from the cache of the DNS, but we don't know what's the malware yet. It will happen maybe in 3 months or 6 months.
Sure.
It will it will start doing something, maybe something bad, and probably dead. And if we can stop very early this kind of communication without hurting the normal business traffic, it can really help.
Great, that's great insight. So the last question I'm actually going to answer myself. The last question is, where do we get the report? Where can we access the IDC report? So notice here on the control panel, there's handout section, and there's a PDF of the report, and you can download it there. I also believe it's available on our website, the EfficientIP website as well. So definitely download that and take a look.
Mm-hmm.
So this concludes today's roundtable discussion. It concludes the webinar. Appreciate everybody's time and attention. And obviously, as always, if you have any questions for any of the three of us or from